Welcome back to another episode of the Wrinkly Brain Podcast. This is a Smooth Brain affiliated podcast where we like to goof, gaff, and do a whole lot of shenanigans. I'm your host, Jason, joined by my co-hosts, Ethan.
Hello.
And Cameron.
Howdy, y'all.
And today we have another special guest for you today. It is Phil Gallagher of ThrabenU. Glad to have you, Phil.
Glad to be here. It's always fun to do collabs.
So, for anyone unfamiliar with Phil Gallagher, he is currently doing variety content creation, but he's primarily Legacy is his go-to format. He does a lot of vintage, popper, and recently you have been exploring and rediscovering your love of EDH, and now cEDH too.
Yeah, it's been an absolute blast, and we'll kind of get into that in the core of the episode here. But I'm doing full-time content creation over the summer, and that's given me a lot of time to explore formats that I don't normally have time to explore, and I've loved every minute of it.
Yeah, so the main layout of the episode is Phil's work in a little bit more detail, Phil's re-exploration of the Commander format and cEDH, and then we want to talk about a bit of a potential phenomenon with Legacy players transitioning into cEDH, and seeing if there's actually something there, or if that's just we're wrong, we observed something, and we're making up things.
Yeah, I'll be happy to kind of give my perspectives here.
All right. But before we get into any of that, we have some icebreakers because we want to know you. We know you're competitive. I've seen your streams. I've seen your videos. You play a lot of competitive, but casually, let's talk about a few things. What is your favorite card? What is your favorite commander deck? And what was your first commander?
All right. My favorite card of all time is unquestionably Vampire Nighthawk. 2/3 lifelinker, flyer, death toucher. This was the first Magic single that I bought. I started playing around Scars of Mirrodin. The first Magic cards I bought were a pre-constructed deck from like original Mirrodin, I think, with like chittering rats and stuff in it. And I got 4 Vampire Nighthawks to add to that deck, like spent a whopping $4. And then I was like, man, how do I ever lose with this card? This is like the greatest card ever printed. And then I learned what like rares and mythic rares were, and it snowballed from there.
Oh yeah.
All right. As far as first commander goes, I think the first commander deck I built back when I originally played was probably Rexiel the Risen Deep, but that was this is a legendary creature I own with some blue and black cards.
Yes.
The first one I actually like designed with some synergy in mind was Omnath, Locus of Mana, which is the original green Omnath that lets you store mana. At all the big mana producers, that was back when Primeval Titan was legal, and I often won with Helix Pinnacle by pumping 100 mana into it.
That's great.
Those are some classics.
Oh yeah, I am starting to get old man energy. I don't feel like I should have old man energy because like there's an entire wave of Magic players way older than I am. Mm-hmm. But I start to like talk to some of the people who are watching my videos. I'm like, yeah, I wasn't born when that card was printed, and I'm like, oh right,
yeah.
And as far as my favorite commander goes, that will be Zonksha, Sleeper Agent, and we'll probably talk about her a little bit during the episode. I built sort of a political EDH deck, and I've been having a lot of fun with it.
And if you want to see some gameplay with Zonksha from Phil, we have a video on our main channel. You can go watch it right now. Shameless plug here. I wasn't even in the game, and I think it's one of the best ones we've recorded. So check it out if you have 12 minutes. You want to go see some great gameplay. But that's awesome. Like all that information, like you've really touched on us feeling like boomers when it comes to Magic. We've had that joke on the podcast a little bit that we've been playing for like 6 years, and I feel like an absolute Magic boomer. And it's probably even worse for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the crazy thing that I keep forgetting is that there's a lot of people who started playing Magic like during the pandemic who like have never been to these big paper events before, who never experienced GPs, and every once in a while I have to check myself and like give that perspective back. And it's like, okay, I've been doing this for a while. I've seen a lot of things. A lot of people's experience in Magic is different than mine.
You talking about like that card I was not alive when that card was printed. That's one of the things that makes me laugh is like Magic is like a year and a half older than I am. Like just so
Yes.
close. It's like so very, very close, and I just sit there and go, man, that card is old. Wait, I'm old. Shit.
I mean,
1 point in the grave, buddy.
It started hitting me when in master sets they were printing cards that were printed in standard sets when we first started playing. When Fatal Push got a master's reprint, I was like, oh, that card was just printed.
Yep.
Also, this I'm old joke brought to you by a guy still in his 20s. So,
Yeah.
let's carry
Yes.
on. So, Phil, let's talk about where did ThrabenU come from? What led to you creating content and becoming now what I would consider one of the big pillars of the legacy format in terms of content creators?
Yeah, I'm probably like number two, probably eclipsed only by one of my co-hosts of the Eternal Glory podcast. So that's probably an okay place to be.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, yeah.
Now I have to get real boomery for a minute, and we have to
Hit
go
us.
back to forums for the beginning of this story.
Wow.
Oh, Lord.
All right. So back in the earlier days of like the SCG tour or circuit or SCG opens, whatever they were called at that time, it's all kind of blurred together at this point for me. If you wanted to talk about a deck competitively, there weren't like discords and stuff. There weren't communities. So you went to MTG The Source to talk about your specific deck list. And I was kind of one of the big Death and Taxes guys on there that was like reading information and posting regularly. And there weren't a lot of us. And one thing I noticed was that as new people would pick up the deck, they would repeatedly ask the same questions. And the source kind of sucked in that it was just like forum threads, right? So you can easily view the first page and you can easily view the newest pages, but anything in the middle just got lost. So I was like, okay, this sucks. And I created a website with resources for the Legacy Death and Taxes deck, which for anyone not familiar with it is essentially a mono-white creature control deck. And I wrote articles on strategy and sequencing, which equipment to fetch, building mana bases. I got guests to help me do content, and I built this resource. And over time, it kind of picked up support and popularity. I was kind of like doing my tournament grinding, getting all sorts of IQ top 8s, and slowly it started turning into, hey, I'm going to get a webcam and buy into Magic Online. I'm going to start streaming, which later became YouTube videos, which is now my current focus. And I've worked with a lot of major pillars of the Legacy format. I've been involved in the Legacy Premier League, for example. I am a podcast host for the Eternal Glory podcast. I'm just very heavily entrenched in the Legacy format.
Yeah. Gushing time. I watch a lot of Phil's content. Like, you're doing daily uploads now, and I'm there for like 6.5 of every video. Like, so you make a lot of great content, and it's always very insightful to see what's going on. And you've now been doing this for what? Eight years?
It's been long enough that I don't know how long I've been doing it now.
Yeah.
The website itself premiered on June 23rd when Thalia Heretic Cathar was previewed. I can get a date. I've got a website that stores all this stuff for me.
That should be 2012 or 2011, right?
No, Thalia Heretic
Heretic
Cathar.
Cathar.
Oh,
That was
Heretic
Shadows
Cathar.
of
3-mana
Arashad.
Thalia.
No, that's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
That's Shadows,
That
right?
was-
Not
I think it was 15.
Yeah, 2016.
Oh,
June 23rd, 2016 was when the website launched, but I had been working on it for about 2 months prior to it going live.
just in my magic brain as well. I'm thinking here, going like, wait, forums were still used in 2016? Holy crap!
Not really. Like, the website was meant to replace and to kind of archive a lot of the stuff from the source.
Yeah.
By about 2016, Reddit threads were really starting to pick up in popularity. A lot of people went to the Legacy subreddit around that time. And I think a bit after that, maybe a year or two after that, I think Discord starts picking up. But don't quote me on that date.
That sounds about right.
It really does
Jinx.
sound about right.
Y'all said that at the same time. I also need to gush. I've since fallen out of playing Legacy. I still have my deck and want to play. It's just we don't really have a scene here anymore because, a pandemic happened. You may have heard.
Yeah.
But but back when I was really playing, like we were playing every week, and like in the middle of the week we were playing. We didn't really play Commander at that point. All of our Magic was Legacy, and I would watch all your D&T videos because I played Maverick. And while some of the things can kind of be applicable towards both, it was more so I could try to beat D&T because that matchup make my brain hurt. And
that's not an easy one.
And our one of our other close friends, Seth Dillard from Casual Pondering.
Casual Pondering.
Yeah, thank you. He was a D&T main, and I wanted to beat him. But then he went to the dark side of Rug Delver when Oko and Ren 6 were in a Delver deck.
Good deck is good. I get it.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, he built the Canadian Threshold version before the Oko and Ren 6. He just stumbled into it seemed.
Mm-hmm.
He
liked casting Tarmogoyf in Legacy. He really likes Tarmogoyf in Legacy.
In smaller gush time, I've been watching Phil's content for years. I peruse, Thraben University quite a bit, and as well as Crimson Zenith, because those were matchups I played post. I need to know how to beat that, because post Cataclysm, playing post, it was a little bit hard to beat Seth's ass in that matchup, and I needed to figure out how to do so. And I've been watching Phil's content for a while, so this is really great for me to actually get to do this. It's a little bit different. I know last episode we had Kim Bauman on, and I was gushing the entire time, so it's kind of nice to have people also gushing with me as well. So I want to say thank you again, Phil, for coming on. This is really great to have you on and get to explore some different sides of the content.
Yeah, and now I know that I helped you beat up on your friends, and really, isn't that what content creation is
much.
all about?
I didn't beat you that much. Well, Cameron, I didn't beat you that much either, but also that's because you play Wastelands. I had choice words. I'm not going to say
Wasteland. That's my favorite card in Legacy is Wasteland. It's so much fun.
Cameron, your favorite Wasteland is the 5th one.
Yes, 5th and 6th one, actually.
GSE, you're robbing up Excavator, buddy?
Of course. It's going to happen.
That's the saddest part about playing Commander now is there's no real scenario to play Knight of the Reliquary and it be good, it feels, unfortunately. And that's probably actually my favorite card.
Just play Dark Depths.
Okay. In Legacy or in Commander.
I've done it.
Maybe
20 still kills.
That's true. Maybe we can find something for you there. But talking a little bit more on Phil's work. Now, obviously, we mentioned that you do a lot of Legacy content, but you do other formats for Magic, at least in the 60-card constructed. I particularly see Pauper and Vintage pop up a fair bit, and then there's that little bit of Pioneer and that little bit of Modern, right?
Yeah, Modern got fired recently, though.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I like to say that my viewers vote with their eyeballs, and the Modern videos kept getting the lowest amount of views, and I was just like, all right, folks, poll, what do we think of Modern? And after talking with my audience and my Discord followers, I was like, okay, they don't want to see Modern anymore. And I introduced Pioneer as an occasional thing that would come to the channel in Modern's spot. But it's mostly Legacy. If I do 7 days a week content, it's probably 4 or 5 Legacy and then 2 of some other format. Mostly focusing on fun brews, creative ideas, that sort of stuff.
Headcanon for when you said this, I thought you were going to be I came to Modern to escape Murktide region, not need to Sparta kick it out of here.
I was just going to ask, do you think that's due to your viewers just primarily preferring Legacy, or is that because when I hear people talk about Modern, I either hear it's awful or it's in the best spot it's been in forever. I've not heard any in between when people talk about Modern. So I was just curious why you think that your viewers aren't as interested in Modern.
I think a lot of my viewers are kind of burnt out with Modern Money Pile.
Yeah.
They're just tired of watching people play with that or against that. And I think another portion of my viewer base is just yeah, when Wizards of the Coast unbans that Splinter Twin, I'll come on back to your Modern format, youngins.
No thanks.
Unban it, just full chaos.
That's breaking chaos. Me a little bit. Oh my god.
Yeah. Now, if they unban Faithless Looting, I'll come back in an instant. I have my Arclight Phoenixes in my binder waiting.
They won't. But... Hey, Ethan, they won't.
Shut up!
Now when they unban Green Sun Zenith, That's when I'm back.
When they unban Cloud Post, I will sell my left kidney.
Well, so Phil, since you're making content on it, I want to ask, how are you feeling about Popper right now?
So asking this question right now on the 10th of July, when we're recording this, is a little tricky because just a few days ago, Monastery Swiftspear was released on Magic Online for legality in Pauper. And that is going to cause the biggest shakeup of Pauper that we have probably seen in the past year. And that's saying something because we've gotten some high power stuff injected into Pauper. Prior to the I shouldn't say printing. Prior to the downshift, a lot of people were a little bit down on Pauper because it was being very much dominated by about 3 pillars. There was the sort of fairies pillar with Spellstutter Sprite. There was the artifact bridge pillar with 12 draw 2 effects in it, plus or minus 1 or 2 depending on what you are doing, and then the ephemerate pillar. And it was kind of like, you're playing one of those 3 things or you're not really playing super competitively. And now there's this huge shakeup where there's a lot of burn decks, prowess decks, hot dog style decks with like Kiln Fiends that are taking advantage of the just raw power level of Swiftspear, which is unquestionably like a legacy power level card. So more data is needed. But, like, absolutely firefighters standing by with the hose, like, do we need this? Is the format on fire?
Well, it's also interesting because I haven't kept up with Pauper in a hot minute since Affinity got banned out of the format. My soul was crushed a little too much. But I know with Baldur's Gate, when that printed, there was Baldur's Gates printed, but Baldur's Gate's not on Moto currently, is it?
Kind of.
Kind of?
Kind of is the answer. Some of the cards are legal. The gate cards are missing and the initiative cards are missing, which currently means that paper Pauper is not equivalent to MTGO Pauper. And to their credit, Magic Online has said, like, hey, we messed up. We realize you need these cards. They're coming. Hold on.
Okay.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that because I didn't realize the gates weren't in Pauper yet, because I was looking at the Pauper metagame because there's been this huge shift that has now included these Arbor Elf Utopia Sprawl decks that have been coming around, these Jund or red-green or even mono-green or Simic, just value piles a lot of the time, very efficient. So that's been a change in the metagame. There's also Boros Bullies always around, but it's going through small changes right now. But the thing that I was looking for was like, okay, where's Is It Fairies sitting at? Are they playing Swiftspear yet? And I found a list that was not playing Swiftspear, but it was playing Blighted Agent, and I was very concerned.
Wait, what?
So it was playing three copies of Blighted Agent and 3 copies of Basilisk Gate, which is the gate that taps to give plus X, which X is the number of gates you control. And it had a total of 12 gates in the deck, I want to say, in the Is It Fairies Ninjas shell.
Oh,
Yeah,
That's hot.
I have seen a couple of paper screenshots. I think Mengucci tweeted something about one of those deck lists, and it absolutely needs to appear on my channel once those cards are legal. Let's just leave it at that. Like, that is absolutely the sort of delicious jank that I want to showcase.
That deck looks so weird. I really want to see what it's up to. Like, how effective is just the random infect creature?
It's a 2-turn clock a lot of the times, right? Like,
Yeah,
just
definitely.
no other pump spells.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not a single other pump spell, I don't think. It did have, I think it had 2 Teamer Battle Rages in there randomly, but like...
Sorry, 1-turn clock then.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah, 1-turn clock potentially. I think it was also there because it's like, well, I have these ninjas that draw cards, so I don't know. Yeah, I don't know, it probably good enough, but it did a thing, so I want to see it.
I don't want to make this too long of a digression, but a lot of times in the early weeks of a format, you have the brewer's advantage for doing something wild like that.
Yep.
And in like the first 2 weeks before a lot of these lists are published, you can absolutely steal games because people don't know what to play around. And then once people do know what to play around, like the strategy becomes non-viable because it was the lack of information that was giving you the initial advantage. And we may see that with some of those sorts of cards where it's like, oh, okay, I know I have to leave up this lightning bolt in this turn cycle or I potentially die. There's going to be a lot of those sorts of learning moments.
Mm-hmm. Brewer's Advantage is always a fun place to be. We'll see how long Truck Stompy can keep getting 5-0s.
I miss Dino Stomping. Can we go back to Dino Stomping being viable?
Yeah, that was one of the ones that I was one of the people working on that very early on. I played that in the Legacy Premier League, and everyone was like, Phil, you are playing against the literal best players in the world. Why are you bringing Dino Stompy? And I'm like, haha, I win this round with dinosaurs. And everyone's like, dang it, Phil.
Yeah, you could say you beat the best Legacy players with dinosaurs.
Yeah, there was another round where I brought like Pithing Needle Stompy into the picture. That one didn't work out. Like, not every brew's a winner.
Yeah.
But it holds a special place in our hearts for sure.
But now that you're moving into, this seems to be more on the casual side of things, of just playing around with EDH and cEDH some. Can we expect any of that on the channel, or is that just going to be like, no, that's something I'm doing for the sake of doing it?
No hard promises one way or another. What I'll say at this point is I am really enjoying the time that I am spending playing EDH. Whether or not that means it's a good idea for me to bring it on my channel in terms of analytics is a different story, but regardless, when the summer is over, I'll still be poking people. I'm like, hey EDH content creator, yeah, I got this sexy Zonksha deck over here. You need to fill that pod? All right, let's battle. That sort of thing is still happening, no matter what.
Awesome.
I love to see it. It's always great to see various content creators, splitting and showing what they're doing. I thought it was really fun watching whenever Playing with Power plays Legacy games. I always thought that was a lot of fun to watch, even if a lot of the decks that were chosen were very much in the spicier brews category or outdated decks as opposed to established metagame decks, but I'm always happy to see it.
It's always nice to see people who love the game, like for the sake of the game, exploring something new. Like, when I recently started playing Pioneer, I had literally no idea what any of the decks in the format were, but I was like, oh man, I can play this sweet mono black control deck? Yeah, let's go. I don't know what my opponent's deck is doing, but I know how to draw cards and pay life for them. Like, I'll figure out everything else along the way. And like, it's fun content, even if it's not necessarily the most competitive all the time.
Sure. So, Phil, we are very happy to welcome you back to Commander. It's so great that you're getting interested in the format again. But what spawned you wanting to come back to the format?
So, ballpark a year ago, just kind of on a lark, I did a pair of Commander videos where we got together a bunch of like the biggest names in Eternal formats, like Justin Gennari, Brian Koval, me, Julian Knob, and we were just like, all right, let's go, let's battle, and like let's just have a good time. And that was a lot of fun. And then I just like basically had zero time for a year. I was teaching in a pandemic. It was a bad school year. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then I finally got to the summer and I'm like, okay, if I'm doing this content creation full time, like I am going to have some time to explore things that I think are fun. And I really wanted to interact with more of the Magic community than what I was interacting with. Just kind of, if you interact with the same people for too long, you end up with this echo chamber sort of situation where, everyone around you is saying the same sorts of things that you are saying. And I wanted a broader perspective on Magic, right? Commander, EDH, it's the most popular format. It is the format that the most people play. I need to know what these people think. What do these people like? What do they enjoy? Who are the content creators they like? What are they doing that maybe I should be doing? And so I've started bumping elbows with a lot of people. The cEDH community in particular has been awesome in terms of giving me resources and opportunities. And I'm breaking into the casual Commander side as well, which is just super fun. Like cEDH in many ways kind of feels like sitting down for a game of like very different Legacy or Vintage. Whereas casual Commander feels more like sitting around the kitchen table with your friends, like when you first started playing Magic. And those things scratch very different itches.
Whenever you can get a pod that achieves that kind of vibe, it's just so much fun. It really unparalleled, in my opinion. Like, it's a different kind of fun than winning a competitive match, like playing across someone playing Legacy.
All right. And casual Commander is very much like the Commander format in general is codified kitchen table. Like that's what it is, and that's great. It's fantastic, and cEDH gives a different feel for how you use that code, which makes it fun. Like there's nothing wrong with like people who go to modern leagues or modern events, right, and they're playing their brew as opposed to playing strictly the meta game. But what makes it fun is you're trying to win, you're trying to play these unique strategies, and you know what you're know what you're likely to go up against and the types of decks you're going to be playing against, which creates its own unique puzzles to solve.
Yeah. In many ways, I feel like casual EDH is the ultimate celebration of deck building, right? Because it's just like, here's 100 cards, no repeat of this theme that I want to do, and I don't have to be restricted by having access to Force of Will or some other interaction on turn 2, or I'm necessarily just dead. And I've seen just really cool interactions since I started playing casual EDH. Like, when someone gets to assemble their janky 5-card infinite that involves making multiple copies of some artifact in their deck, like, there's a lot of times where someone's like, I didn't know my deck could do that. This is really cool.
So, plug the video again. If you like well done lasagna, then I play Baba Lasagna. Maybe I find a combo I didn't know that was in my deck. Maybe I don't find it. I'm not gonna say.
Unrelated note on that video, did anyone actually notice in my intro I said lasagna on purpose? Did anyone
Yes.
actually notice that?
I noticed, and I was very
Okay.
happy with it.
Okay, I'm just making sure my meme didn't go unnoticed.
So, did you look at my deck list?
yeah,
It's Baba
I did.
Lasagna. Okay,
I
good.
know.
Okay.
I do research on those intros. Trust me, I
Several
do pay attention.
I think
Well,
I referred to her exclusively as Baba Lasagna the whole time we were playing as well.
I had to say it different
There
in
was
the intro
one.
just to make sure.
There was one Lasaga in there. There was one.
Yeah. Back to Phil's point, though, on this being like the celebration of deck building. There's no other format where you can build Chair Tribal or a Friends TV show themed deck. So I think like you're right. It is just such a open format where you can do anything you want, and because it is a casual themed, there's no restrictions, no expectations, unless it's your play group. That's where Rule Zero comes in about having a balanced play experience. But as long as there's that communication of, hey, I'm bringing Chair Tribal, match my power level, do whatever you want.
Yeah. Or this is another thing we can get into. You can pull your punches. I know a lot of people don't like it when you pull your punches in Commander games for some reason, but it's like if you don't have a deck that actually matches the power level of Chair Tribal, just play in a way that does.
Mm-hmm.
So like that's an easy way to do it. But Phil, you were like, my janky 5-card combo with artifacts that I don't know what they're doing to assemble this nonsense. Can I interest you in the Great Machine?
Yeah! Great Machine!
I don't know what this is, but go on.
All right,
You
so
started
you're
Mirrodin. You should know.
Well, Scar's Mirrodin. Original Mirrodin, though.
My bad.
You're familiar with the station cards, Grinding Station,
Yes.
Blasting Station. All right, Summoning Station, Salvaging Station, add in a 0-mana artifact that creates an infinite mill, infinite damage combo.
Got it. Yeah, I'm familiar with that.
Yeah, that is my Osgear deck. I don't know what I'm doing. I just want the Great Machine in my deck. Let's just do that.
Hey, I ported a Brea deck into the Odric from Crimson Vow, or was it Vow? I think it was Vow. Yeah, I ported that deck into a Boros deck and just had to have essentially 3 other creatures on the field, so you made enough blood tokens on ETB just to infinitely blink Osgear. Or not Osgear, Odric. Other
Odric.
O. Boros.
Yeah.
Boros
Boros.
commander that starts with an O.
Yeah, Boros Odric that makes blood tokens. Because
Yes.
he's a vampire now.
He's a vampire and he does a set-related thing. Ooh.
We did
He's
it.
quote-unquote good.
All right. So we have another question here that was like, how do you feel about the format as you've seen it? So far, seems good.
Honestly, I'd go stronger than that. Like, I think casual EDH is probably the best format in Magic, with a big asterisk there of you have to find the right group. Like,
Yes,
you
true.
have to be on the same page. The other people have to want to have the same experience as you are. I'm a Dungeons and Dragons player as well. Like, the Dungeons and Dragons campaign are supposed to start with the session 0, where like everyone figures out what characters they're going to play, what the world is going to be like, and kind of make sure everything fits. I think an EDH game where everyone's at the same power level, like everyone is just vibing, like that is just a good time. And cEDH is an enjoyable format that's young enough where everything isn't like fully broken, fully discovered, fully optimized yet. The competitive scene for that with like actual factual tournaments with real prizes is really just starting to pick up. I think a lot of great minds are going to be attracted to that prize pool and start working on it, and we'll probably see innovation. And we'll certainly see new cards injected into the format that will mix things up even more.
At least talking on Commander as a whole always gets new cards. cEDH in particular is another one of those ones where it's like, it's like any competitive format where only a certain number of cards end up making it, but it always seems like nowadays 2 to 3 cards end up being very relevant, or at least relevant enough that people definitely want to play with it. Like in Streets of New Capenna, Ledger Shredder being as relevant as it was, I didn't see that coming.
No one did. And then everyone played against that card exactly once and went 4 in cart. Actually, no. Cross that out. 4 foils in cart order. Like
that price spike was insane.
Yep.
Yeah, it took literally 1 turn cycle of me seeing that card in play and realizing that it triggered off both players to just be like, oh no. Oh no.
Would you like to win the counter war? Cool. I'll draw another card.
Oh my god. Ew. Ew.
Disgusting.
Yeah, I have played against a lot of really cool Ledger Shredder brews in multiple formats, and you don't even need to be doing anything cute. It can just be there as a giant flyer. But then I also played against this like Ledger Shredder Buried Alive Phoenix deck, where the Ledger Shredders were like looting the Phoenixes into the graveyard, and I was just like, no, I'm
Phil,
so
I
dead.
need more of this in my life.
This is
Dark Ritual, Buried Alive, trigger Ledger Shredder, discard a Phoenix, put the other 3 in with Buried Alive, cast some other spell, attack you for 12 plus however big Ledger Shredder is.
Do you know if these are the ones still playing Land Grant, or are they off Land Grant currently?
I think they're off Land Grant, but
Can I go
the
full
lists
real
aren't
quick? I need to go
super,
change my
super
pants.
popular.
Yeah, you're good to go.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate it.
That is the spiciest brew.
I've always appreciated the Phoenix decks with Buried Alive. They just never got enough standing. That just, having another way to actually pitch the Phoenixes that's consistent. Oh, that sounds so nice.
I liked that solid weekend where they were like, yeah, this is like tier 1.5.
Oh, yeah. And
That was a fun weekend.
And then, like, at one point, a Jund version popped up in, like, a weekly challenge on Moto, and then never saw the light of day again.
Yep. Very much one weekend.
One weekend per year.
Mm-hmm. So, Phil, you've come back in, you've built Zansha, and you have Marwyn, and that's on the cEDH side, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you had one other deck, right? Or is that something you're just testing out?
So I just proxied up Heliod's Sun Crowned. I got a list from someone. Without getting into the nitty gritty, unless you want to, I don't think Marwyn is a like tournament viable cEDH deck. I think it is a cEDH deck, but I don't think it is at the same power level as like the tier 1 commanders or whatever you want to call them. And if I'm going to be doing like guest content with people who are like really entrenched in these formats, I needed a more competitive deck. Like I've got a Marwyn win or 2 on camera. Like the deck is powerful. It can do some nutty stuff, but it's just disruptible on too many axes. And all right, I need to get into some technical jargon here. All right.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Go for it.
A good combo deck a lot of times is an A plus B combo deck, where you need piece 1, piece 2, and then you win. In Commander, I am very much of the opinion that it can be a 3-card combo, an A plus B plus C deck, and be totally viable if, like, the C card is your commander.
Oh, yeah.
But Marwyn was more like an A plus D plus A plus B plus C plus D plus E plus F combo deck, where you needed, like, multiple elves to trigger Marwyn or a pump spell. Then you needed a source of card advantage, at least 2 cards to generate an infinite combo, and then an outlet to win as well. and it was just too many moving parts and not all of the combo pieces overlapped. I was finding myself in a lot of situations where I would have all of the pieces for the infinite combo, and then I'd have to pass the turn, and something would get blown up, and it wasn't for me. I was very happy with it as a first deck. It goldfishes relatively well, but just kind of eats it to a timely bounce spell or fierce guardianship or whatever.
What made you decide to try Heliod next? I know probably one of the reasons you felt that way about Marwyn's as a monocolor deck. We went to another monocolor deck, which makes me question what about it drew you to that.
Well, you see, I'm a degenerate who really likes playing Chalice of the Void, Thorn of Amethyst, and all those sorts of cards.
You can say no more. I fully understand.
Y'all are kindred spirits in that regard.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so I figured I would try out the Rule of Law pillar next, and if I don't like it, I'll just, like, pick some 4-color partner commander mush and learn that.
Why not Osgear? Or not Osgear.
Oswald.
Oswald, thank you. Other O commander I can't pronounce the name today. Why not?
So
we're talking about doing stacks pieces, and those are artifacts. Why not Oswald instead of Heliod? Do you just prefer to have a plus B with part A being the command zone? Is that just really to Heliod?
That was part of the appeal. The other appeal was I messaged my friend from grad school, Charles, the mono white guy, Ivaldi.
Oh, Charles.
And I was just like, all right, Charles, send me a couple of mono white EDH decks that are competitive. I need to look at them. And we had a conversation for like half an hour, and then I was like, okay, I'm gonna pick this one. I was also looking at a light pause deck just to like have something that gets off the ground very quickly. Just like play my threat on turn 1, maybe also with a lock piece, and then just slam lock pieces for the rest of the game. That seemed very good to me as well.
Yeah, light pulse is definitely powerful. I think it ends up asking for too many pieces to be cEDH viable, or rather cEDH powerful, because it is cEDH viable. I will give it that. But it's one of those ones where it's like, if Rule of Law is good, this is a deck that's like, it's okay into Rule of Law, but not great into Rule of Law.
Yeah, you're hoping your commander is down and stacking up before you play a Rule of Law effect, because it becomes very awkward to play that afterwards. Whereas with the Heliod Ballista, like, you need your one card, and then hopefully you have a protection card, like a Mother of Runes or equivalent online to protect everything. And your commander being indestructible also is huge.
And not a creature.
And not a creature, yeah.
Yeah.
Alright. So, did the interest in cEDH come from, like, just it's a new area of Commander you haven't explored yet, or there's been a recent uptick in cEDH content creation, at least. Did that just latch on? Did you just latch onto any of that, or see that was interesting and you're like, I want to try it out?
So it kind of was one of those things where a bunch of people in my feed started messing around with the format. As you kind of mentioned earlier, there's been this slow movement of legacy players or like previous tournament grinders getting into cEDH. Brian Koval, aka Bosch and Roll, was kind of the one who, like, I started seeing his tweets about the format, and he was really excited about the deck building and stuff. So he was probably the one that, while he didn't like say, hey, you should play this format, he was probably the one who got me excited about like looking into it. And then as I had more time, I just threw out a tweet. I'm like, hey, I'm thinking about getting into this format. And then I got like 50 follows in a day, and I was just like, whoa.
Yep.
Okay, people like this.
Yeah, and then I started talking with a bunch of the content creators in the format. They gave me advice, and I kind of aggregated all of that into a page on my website, ThrabenUniversity.com, and kind of aggregated a bunch of the like resources that people sent me about getting into the format, and I'll kind of update that over time as I have the chance to. And so now I get to be one of those filthy tournament players, bringing my perspectives to cEDH. Twitter is all sorts of hot recently about the EDH players versus the cEDH players versus the tournament grinders. I mean, if you ignore all the drama, like, there's really great people on all over the place.
That is peak astronaut with a gun meme. Like, just always has been.
Always has been.
That's honestly nothing new. But something that is new, and I thought that was really interesting, is when you were talking about you were chatting with us a little bit about the Morrowind deck, and you wanted to go and prove something to them with a hypergeometric calculation.
Yeah.
Something very helpful for tournament grinders to use.
Okay, so for those of you scared by big math words, don't worry. You can just Google hypergeometric calculator, and you can even put magic after it, and it will simplify everything for you so that you don't need to understand the technical terms. I'm gonna use teacher voice here for a minute and kind of explain everything, but I'm gonna leave out all the jargon. So basically, hypergeometric calculation is used when you want to figure out what your chances are of drawing something over a certain number of draws, or by looking at a certain number of cards. And sometimes it's as easy as, oh, I've drawn a 7-card hand, I have a 1 in 93 chance of drawing this thing. Well, now, what do you do if you have 16 hits and you have 5 draws to get there? Now, all of a sudden, the math got way harder and way more complicated, right? Because every time you draw a card, the number of cards in your deck changes and the number of hits you have might change as well. So a hypergeometric calculator goes and does all of that brain work for you, so you can see, hey, what are my chances of hitting my 3rd land drop if I've kept a 2-lander? What are my chances of hitting a colored pip versus a colorless land? What are my chances of hitting an elf? You can use these calculators to see, and get a mathematical kind of visual for how likely is my deck to actually do its thing. And specifically within the context of cEDH, the Morrowind deck, as it is sort of presented on the deck list database, has 1/3 of its lands producing colorless mana. And I looked at that deck and I went, you all are insane. This is not okay. You're going to have to mulligan so many hands because of this. And I started running the numbers, and basically the argument that was sent to me was we mulligan aggressively anyway, and you get 1 free mulligan, and that balances it out. And I was like, okay, I see that, but every time I throw away a viable hand because I don't have a colored pip in it, or every time I need 2 colored pips because I need to play my commander and an elf, I have turned a viable hand into a non-viable hand. And so I started kind of digging into the math behind the mana base, and I didn't really like what I saw. And I cut a card and everyone was like, no, you can't cut that card. That card's too good. I think it was an emergence zone. So it was a good card.
Thank you.
And I was just no, I just need another forest.
Hate emergence zone.
I cut it from every single cEDH deck I have ever built.
Really?
I cut Emergent Zone.
Wow.
I'm on 4-color piles. What greedy nonsense do I have to be on
Winning
to
at
play
each
28
instance.
lands or 29 lands and 4-color piles? No, I am 31 lands, all producing colored mana.
But Jason, you can win.
You can win it
There's
instant
2
speed.
ad-nauseas on the stack.
Yes.
You can win in response to 2 different ad-nauseas. Isn't that the dream?
Stop it.
No,
Just
that
play
is
the
the
ad
dream,
nos.
Nathan.
Just okay. That's the correct answer, Jason.
Yeah, and so looking at the mana base, I just had a lot of issues like this, where there were a bunch of situationally good cards in a proactive deck that is trying to win on turn 3 relatively consistently. So how many utility lands do you really have room for? And one of the first things I did was just add in a couple more basic lands, kind of try to eliminate that greed. I added another elf into the deck to kind of make it so that I would have more hits with my commander. I think my adjustments were good, or at least reasonably, were done under reasonable logic. I just don't think the deck's power level is up to snuff with some of the higher level ad-naus and when decks can just have Tymna in the command zone as sources of card advantage, you've got to be powerful, you've got to be consistent, and I just thought the deck had too many hoops to jump through to do its thing.
Fun fact: after we did an episode on the most played tribal decks in Commander, I did some further searching because the number 1 most played commander, everyone goes oh, it's Atraxa. But if you take out all these specific partner pairings and just look at the individual partners, Tymna is the most played commander.
Yeah, I absolutely believe that as someone new to the format. Like, card is good. That's lifelink in the command zone. That's card draw in the command zone.
What more could you need?
Well, you got another partner to round it out.
Oh, yeah. So you're WinCon, like Thrasios. Oh, wait.
Yeah, 1 to 2 colors. That's all you need. One to 2 extra colors.
Oh, yeah.
God, Tymna's so good. So, overall, you've spoken about Marwyn, and you're trying out Heliod. How do you feel about cEDH as a whole, both like format and like, the community, talking with people?
Community gets like 5-star recommendation. So many people have been very, very friendly, very helpful. Rebel has tweeted a lot and handed me resources, as have just a vast number of people. The cEDH community, huge thumbs up from me. Generally speaking, I like the cEDH gameplay, with the exception of long, non-deterministic turns. There are a decent number of things that, like, air quotes combo off, but, like, that combo is just, like, drawing 10 cards, and so the turns become incredibly complicated and, like, arduous, maybe, might be a good word, where, like, when you have 3 people waiting on you in a webcam game, and you're, like, pretty favored to win, but not actually, like, getting the win. It often produces these game states where you're like, okay, we're in garbage time, you're probably winning, but if I top deck this, or if I get a tutor, or if I draw the removal spell for that, we're not dead. There's a decent number of awkward games like that, like, while they aren't bad, they don't exactly feel good either.
So what I'm grasping from this is you do not like Kraken Sakashima. If you talk about long deterministic turns. And considering our guest last week, that is is that true, Phil, that you're not the biggest fan of my thumbless boy and his multiple other thumbless boys?
That's whatever. Like,
okay,
I'm pretty cool losing to anything once. Like, it'd be very different like 6 months from now when I'm entrenched in the format and I'm like, oh man, I lost to that, I don't know, old stick fingers deck again, and it takes forever to win. You know, like,
God, I love that deck. It's so
hilarious. Have you played against Kraken Sakashima? Because I had to tie everything back to my deck. Have you played against Kraken Sakashima before?
I don't think so.
Okay, so that's one reason why you're so okay against it, because...
okay, brief story time. Like, a couple months ago, like 4 months ago at this point, cEDH was a storm of just nonstop hatred for Karkashima, because this was... One, it is a non-deterministic combo deck, right? Kark is, every time you cast an instant or sorcery, you flip a coin, you either double that spell or you get nothing. It goes back to your hand, right? When you get multiple of them in play, though, you can double it multiple times and still return the card to your hand, and you get to these very non-deterministic loops. It really did attribute a lot to slowing down the Marquesa 2022 event that was held by Monarch Media. So when they released their tournament notes and were like, yeah, we're very wary of this, we want to watch this, and it may involve that we can't have it in the tournaments, to that extreme of a belief on it, right? People were actually like upset with people for playing Karkashima. We played it on the channel and got a lot of dislikes for it.
I got a lot of vitriol thrown my way.
We uploaded it at the worst possible time.
Yes.
I mean, the worst possible time is the best possible time, though, right? Like, you get those hatred comments, like...
we got
your hate fuels me.
Yes.
I go back and look at those comments every once in a while. I was like, yep, I did something good here.
Yeah, but it's like, it's good. It was fun. I enjoyed that game, and I still enjoy playing against Karkashima. But I can certainly understand why some people dislike it. I can similarly understand why some people don't like playing against Gitrog Monster or Inala, or you mentioned Old Stick Fingers, which is also an equally convoluted combo.
So I picked that as a random Magic card that I thought was like not gonna see play. So whoops.
Oh no.
Yeah. Have you not seen those Old Stick Fingers decks?
No.
Oh,
I have 2 creatures in my deck, and I will guarantee mill them. It's a Razaketh and a
what's the other
Dryad
card?
Arbor to guarantee
Yes.
that I have reanimation effects to get them into play
Yes.
and combo off ad nauseum stuff. It's
It's hilarious.
It's
oh
fantastic.
my god, it's so dumb, but
That's
I love
very
it.
funny. Okay.
I thought
We know Phil's next deck.
I thought you knew.
We thought you were on top of
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
Like you've done your homework.
Old
No, I've played like over a dozen cEDH games, but not much more over that. So I have, decent experience against a small number of decks.
Okay.
I'm very much still new to the format.
Well, I gotta say, you took a shot at the dark and you just hit a bullseye. That's a good job.
You memed your way into a good point. I'm proud of you.
Very good.
Yeah, I think as the cEDH tournaments become more popular and as more of them happen, cEDH will have an adjusted version of the Magic tournament rules specifically for that format. And I think things like slow play will very much be maybe not an issue, but something that will need adjustment for that format. Because it's very different processing information when you have a single opponent and you like more or less know what your opponent's deck does at any given time. But once you have 3 opponents with 3 sets of interactions to think about and 3 sets of permanents on board, like the amount of information that like you need to process goes up by a lot.
Yeah, like add into the politics side of things, because in your 1v1 games of Magic, you're never going to run into the situation of, hey, can you hold that land in your hand so my windfall is bigger? Like, it'll get you another card. That's better for you, right?
Yeah, and I imagine like bribery collusion rules are going to be all sorts of weird.
Yeah.
I don't even want to think about that. Like I used to be a level 2 judge, and it's just like
Nice.
that's complicated. Like cEDH has these like unwritten, now they're written, like there's this like mantra of like you are playing to win for yourself, you take game actions to win for yourself. But like what about top 8 like splitsies, or maybe top 4 splits, whatever, like one of us can get in, like will you split with me if I do something that makes it so I do a kingmaker situation. There's going to be a lot of really weird stuff there.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
that's a good point.
it's definitely a different dynamic, and you can get into the ethics of things like mana bullying
Oh,
or
yeah,
priority bullying.
Yeah.
Which, if you're not familiar with that, we can explain that another time. But it is a huge topic, and if you're ever in like a cEDH podcast, absolutely talk with them about this from a judge perspective, because that's a interesting and intense conversation.
I mean, we could sum it up real quick. It's not that hard.
Yeah, I mean, well, the basics
We
of
can
it
try.
is
Like the basics,
Is-
yeah. Yeah.
player one, active player casts spell, second player goes, I have a reaction to it, but I don't want to cast a spell, pass priority. You get to the fourth player and you go, hey, tap your land for mana to give me priority again.
They wanted
That's-
player 4 to tap out, so they can have opportunity to interact, and then when it gets back to their turn, then their opponent that they bullied out of holding up mana is now tapped out, so therefore they can go off easier.
I see.
Yeah,
It's crappy.
yeah, it's one of those ones where it's like, I don't feel like just tapping a land should do another round of priority, but apparently it changes things in a way where it needs to. So
I see. Okay, yeah, let's not go into that. That's a whole
Yeah,
episode for you
that-
all later.
exactly. Like I said, big cEDH podcast, absolutely go deep on that, because that is a hot topic issue still in the community as to whether or not that's allowed.
Yeah, I absolutely have competitive stories about like judge calls involving priority, where it's like, okay, I just won this game because of priority pass, so like I get this, but moving on.
Yeah.
All right. The last big thing we wanted to talk about was that bridging between Legacy and cEDH. All right. So the three of us, Jason, Ethan, and Cameron, we are all Legacy players first who found our way into cEDH. And we actively pursued it, but Phil, is that also the case for you? Would you say that's accurate, at least?
So like Legacy is kind of like my love. Like I started playing Magic, and less than a year later, I just like got into Legacy. Like that is like very much the kind of Magic that I wanted to play. And the cEDH shares a lot of its card pool with Legacy and Vintage, right? Like you're all playing the most powerful and broken things of all times that are legal in your respective formats. There's a lot of overlap there. So like I can definitely see it as like kind of being attractive to jump ship to it.
Mm-hmm. And you've also mentioned that Brian's trying it out. Bryant as well tried it as well, right?
Yes. Bryant Cook of theepicstorm.com, I believe, has been working on Rog Silas Storm. Do those names sound right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rog Bracken, Silas Ren.
Yeah, Mr. Rogers, Turbonos.
Yeah. I know he's been trying to optimize that. He's absolutely a storm in every format sort of guy. Play the most degenerate combo deck that you can play. And I know Brian's got a couple of decks going. I recognized the name like Drake Sasser from my tournament days. I think he has even started doing a cEDH podcast. There's a lot of Legacy folks that I recognize from like SCG classics and opens and stuff who are getting interested in this format and who are going to try to break this format.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I welcome it. It's always fun to see the random breakthroughs. When we had Ken on after the podcast, we were chatting with him a little bit, and he was just like, Legacy players, what are we missing? Like, what can we do to break this format more? We want to see it.
Yeah, so you're going to have this really weird influx of players who know nothing about your format, but know a lot about like competitive playtesting and deck optimizations and things like that. So like, there's half the times where I'm like, I have an idea. Am I a genius, or am I missing something really basic in the format that everyone else just like intrinsically understands?
Yeah.
And it's like half and half with a lot of the ideas that I have. Like a lot of times I'm missing context, like, oh, that's in the deck to fight Thassa's Oracle specifically, which is one of the better strategies. There's a lot of times where without the context, you can't optimize. But a lot of fresh eyes coming in who aren't stuck in like the heuristics and play patterns that like you all have like come to know will sometimes see something from a different perspective and go, yeah, but why not blank?
Yeah, that's very true. That's very helpful for, at least in the cEDH environment, with an influx of Legacy players, which I think we can circumstantially say that there is this influx as cEDH is growing, that the Legacy community in particular seems to be interested in what's going on in cEDH, as it's an outlet for playing a lot of cards that they're used to playing and other things they don't get to play in a similar context, though.
Yeah, like you dangle a $2,000+ prize pool in front of a bunch of competitive players, and they'll be like, "Yeah, I can spend 30 hours preparing for this tournament. Like that's fine. I can do that."
Well, since we think there is this, and I imagine it's play patterns and also just some of the cards as well. Like, I mean, if you have your duels, it's a little bit easier to get in, right?
Like LED, you want to play your LED.
That's one of those cards where I'm like, I need to pick one up for cEDH, but no.
Yep, that's my exact point too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even cards that you don't normally get to play in, that you don't see as much in Legacy. Like, is Wheel banned in Legacy? Straight up Wheel of Fortune? No. Yes?
I don't. It's either banned or not good.
Yeah,
it's
well, you get to play
I
Wheel
know
of Fortune.
Windfall. Windfall's banned.
Windfall is legal.
It must.
Yeah,
be
I imagine
banned.
Wheel is banned. I have a good feeling.
Let
it's
me
'cause,
Google.
Like, why would bonus round, Ruby Storm not play that?
You're
Yeah,
right.
that checks out.
Sorry, I didn't mean to spark this discussion.
No.
Is Wheel banned?
No, this is the casual. We have 4 Legacy players, and no one can tell you what's on the ban list. It's fine.
I'm
Fortune
real
is banned.
good at the banned list, like after I started playing Legacy, but anything that was on there beforehand is just like could be not good, could be banned. Like there's a lot of crazy stuff on the banned list that like probably doesn't belong. So
It is banned. I can confirm.
Okay.
I'm looking at the Wizards page.
Okay, so my point still stands. You get to play cards that are banned in Legacy, like Wheel of Fortune, or that might not be as
Vampiric Tutor.
Oh yeah, Vampire.
Soul Ring.
You know,
Yeah.
further
Here-
thinking on this, why would we be playing Days Undoing if we had Wheel of Fortune?
Yeah.
You're already
right,
in that color combo.
Okay, so here's one thing I'll say. As far as the accessibility of cEDH goes, when I played my first cEDH games, I knew what almost every card did, with the exception of the legendary creatures that I had to read. When I played my first EDH game on Spell Table, I was like, oh my gosh, there's so many
Yes.
cards here. I don't know what this 5-mana enchantment is. I have no idea. But almost every card in cEDH I recognize from some competitive format or other, and that makes it very accessible. You are learning singleton deck building, you are learning the politics and some nuances of the format, but as far as the card pool goes, the card pool is so accessible to Eternal players. I think that's a huge selling point for the format.
All right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, regardless of whether or not you're a Legacy player, how would you recommend getting into the format now? You've recently jumped in, and you now have your resource page. So
I watched a couple of videos that kind of gave me the feel for the format in less than an hour. I watched Competitive Commander for Beginners by Rebel Sun, and I watched What is cEDH, which is a playlist by Playing with Power. After watching 50 minutes of videos between those two, I felt like I knew what was going on in the format. And then I just spent a little while thumbing through deck lists, and I straight up just looked for what is a monocolor deck that does not cast counterspells, because I'm not going to know what I need to counter when I first start playing. What is a powerful linear monocolored deck that I can play to do for my first handful of games, and that's kind of why I picked Marwyn.
Mhm.
Generally speaking, I am a big believer in that if you don't understand the nuances of a format, just try to kill your opponent, right? You don't understand a format, play Burn. You don't understand a format, play Reanimator. Play something where you get your opponent dead, and you just kind of hope for no interaction. You don't need to make decisions about their hands, their cards. That's kind of why I did what I did, and that worked out very well for me for those first couple of games. And the cEDH community is very, 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 very proxy friendly, which means you don't need to make the 2,000 plus, and probably a lot more in this format, honestly, dollar
Four-color
investment into selecting a deck before you have a chance to play. And I tell the same thing to Legacy players. If you are going to get into a format like Legacy, make sure before you buy cards that you're comfortable playing this deck, or at least this general strategy, for years before you invest. You like playing with Wasteland and Aether Vial, okay, buy Death and Taxes. If you don't like it, there's other Aether Vial decks that you can transfer later. You like casting cantrips, okay, buy a Delver deck or a Control deck. Even if you need to change colors later, you won't have to acquire that many more cards.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And furthermore, if anybody wants more cEDH content creators to look at, we've mentioned Playing with Power and Rebel Sun. They're both excellent. There's also things like Play to Win. That's one of our favorites as well. And there's a few other ones that I can definitely recommend, like Spike Feeders.
I'm going to plug Ken from Stacked EDH for sure.
Stacked EDH, Mental Misplace as well. So a lot of really good content creators. There's been a huge boom to the format recently. It's that you're getting content creators left and right for cEDH, and I think it's fantastic. And as you mentioned, for picking the decks, your win cons, your playstyles. All right, here's the big question: can we port Legacy decks?
Absolutely, unquestionably. Marwyn, for example, is not exactly similar to Legacy Elves, which tends to do Glimpse of Nature chains, but it is very much the same general philosophy. And if you understand the style of that deck, you are going to port over to Marwyn relatively easily. I owned Legacy Elves in paper. I've played that deck on Magic Online plenty. I threw on some YouTube videos, Goldfish Marwyn for 3 hours, and then went, okay, I know how to play this deck. And similarly, the Heliod Ballista deck that I am going to play, bears a lot of similarities to Legacy Death and Taxes or Stacks, as will just about any mono white deck in the format, because like there's a lot of mono white hate bear staples that are just going to slot into these competitive commander decks just because like those are the things you need to stop in the format.
Yeah. I feel like there's some strategies that won't make it. True Delver, I don't think makes it, because like the blue-red tempo shell is a little bit hard to do. You can play something that's certainly going to have blue-red with tempo elements to it, like Najeela. Plays
Ashai, Jessica.
Oh yeah, Jessica Ishai.
Yeah,
those two. So, that pairing works very well like that as well.
It's called Murder Bird on the Decklist database.
Excellent. That is very accurate because that bird murder real quick.
Yeah, I think as far as something like Delver goes, you end up more with individual cards that have Delver vibes than the deck being Delver. Professional Facebreaker is one of those things that stands out to me, right? Like, it is an evasive threat that very much has, like, Ragavan vibes from, like, an earlier time of Legacy. Like, there's some of those sorts of cards that are going to, like, give you joy if you are a Delver player. But there's a big difference between attacking one opponent for 20 life and attacking 3 other opponents for a total of 120 life, right? Like, you have so much more work to do that if you're doing things in the red zone, they probably have to be accumulating card advantage or otherwise doing other things that your deck wants to be doing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, like, Bryant's has his field day because, like, you know, you can do Adnos wherever you want.
Yeah.
So you can certainly do the Storm style combo decks with relative ease in the format and with a lot of variety.
Yeah, like you can build a Doomsday deck, right? Like
Doomsday,
Thassa's Oracle, Demonic Consultation, like those sorts of things exist, and a lot of the more powerful, especially combo oriented Legacy decks and Vintage decks, like those strategies are going to port over, right? Like you can build a Stacks deck that has a lot of similarities to Legacy Mud or Vintage Shops. But you want to make sure you are playing something powerful and not just porting over something for the sake of porting over something, right? Yep. Like, there is a difference between you going, like, this is my casual commander deck with a Scooby-Doo sub-theme, and you going, like, I'm going to try to just port this into cEDH for giggles, right? Because, like, when you are setting that bar at cEDH, like, you are setting down at a table where everyone is trying to kill you, air quotes by turn 3, but more realistically, it's probably a turn 5 or turn 6 format after interaction gets involved. And like there's a bar for power level.
Phil, you just made me think of the dumbest thing. I would like to see a Venn diagram of weed themed decks and Scooby-Doo themed decks.
Are they a circle?
Is it a circle? Is it just one small circle, big circle? Yes.
It kind of just depends on, like, if you're wanting to port, it depends upon, like you said, like, the individual cards really help. So, like, since I had Maverick, I had all the Abzan stuff. I had my Abzan duels in my cradle, so if I wanted to play an Abzan deck in cEDH, I would have easier access to that than if I wanted to play, you know, Kinrith, Razaketh Kinrith or whatever. Was that, like, Reanimator Kinrith? But as far as, like, the strategy, like, of my Maverick strategy, I could do, like, Timna Kamal Stacks, but even then, that's kind of, like, not exactly the same, you know? Ish, like, the Stacks.
You'll get the vibe.
You get the vibe.
You'll get the vibe.
Mm-hmm. But
we're all about vibes here.
One of the issues here, I think, in, like, trying to just port over a deck for the sake of porting over a deck is a lot of times in powerful formats like Legacy and Vintage, the decks are built around a 4-of card that you are allowed to play, like, Ponder, Brainstorm, Preordain, Expressive Iteration to find. And it's not uncommon for a deck like Delver to look at roughly 30 of its cards in the first 5 turns. And then all of a sudden, when you try to convert those numbers into cEDH, like, all of a sudden your deck is bigger, You have less consistent access to the same cards. And so if you want to build your deck around a single card or strategy, like a lot of the glue is cantrips and tutors and stuff, and you are expending your mana to find the cards rather than just playing the cards, right? And that slows down your goldfish turn. If you have to spend 6 total mana in order to assemble your combo pieces and then go off, like if someone else just went like Dark Writ, 2 lands, Lotus Petal, Adnaz, like they have just used their 6 mana to win, whereas you have used your 6 mana to spin the wheels. So there's some of that you have to keep in mind. Like deck sizes are changing, as are like quantities of cards that you are allowed to run and the amount of time that it takes you to assemble things.
Yeah, it's a really good point, and I definitely think we can say porting over some of the elements, definitely something we can do. For example, Cameron, when you mentioned playing Maverick, I was like, oh well, Yasharn kind of gets you that feel.
Yeah,
You can play Gaddock T, you can get that feel if you have a higher focus on a mana denial strategy than just a don't let the opponent cast the spells strategy, which is pretty much the same thing, just different means to the same ends. But it does seem like we can do it. We can find the ways to get Doomsday ad nauseum. The combo decks in particular are the ones that we're able to get out there, and Legacy does have the benefit of I say benefit, but it doesn't have aggro decks, so it's relatively easy to ignore the aggro decks because we don't have to worry about them.
That is correct. A true aggro deck is almost never present in Legacy. A year or so ago, the Madness deck was relatively popular, playing like Vengevines and Hollow Ones and things of that nature, but that's fallen off of the map. The removal has just gotten better.
Yeah, the Dredge style decks.
Yep. One of the issues with porting Legacy combos into cEDH is that a lot of them are meant to kill one player.
Yeah.
Painter Grindstone is a fantastic combo. It is very mana efficient. The cards are very easy to tutor for. So, for example, Urza Saga can find your Grindstone, and there's so many tutors for artifacts. But like a Painter Grindstone activation kills one person, and that's a lot of turn cycles that you have to deal with before you get to kill another person, and one more turn cycle before you kill that 4th person, right? And similarly, there are some cards with downsides that you often mitigate. So, for example, sacrificing a Veteran Explorer to ramp you out some lands sounds really cool. And then when you ramp 3 other people instead of just one other person, all of a sudden that gets way scarier for you.
Yep. Yeah, that's a rough one to do. And that, granted, Nick Fit and Veteran Explorer decks have always been a little bit risky in Legacy to begin with, but with especially like greedy Delver mana bases where they're on their 5th, they need their 5th volcanic island, so they're playing Steam Vents now, and they only play 1 basic nowadays usually.
Wait, they play Steam Vents now?
Oh yeah, they've been
sometimes
doing that for a couple
2
months.
Ew.
Yeah.
I don't know how to feel about this information.
Ew.
I told you before about them playing Mystic Sanctuary to go over the top of each other.
They touch on instant.
We did have that conversation.
Ew.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fetch the Steam Vents
Um,
on instant.
I don't know how to feel about that or the fact you mentioned Nick Fit on this podcast. I'm a little conflicted about both of those.
I mean, it's about the same popularity as Post right now.
Jason, I will drive the 10 hours to find you and beat your ass if you talk that much crap at me again.
It's 16. Good luck.
You've been defeated.
This is my official resignation for the
Yes.
podcast.
All right,
But
with that roast,
that was a good
roast,
point,
I think
Jason.
we're good.
Well, I was gonna make a point because I feel like to Phil's point, to sum up his point about finding the cards and mana efficiency, it's an inverse relationship between efficiency and consistency when it comes to mana and finding the cards, and so it's balancing that. When you add blue to a deck, you add that consistency at a lower mana cost because you get those cantrips. You don't get to run as many as you do in Legacy, but at least that does add that consistency. And the black gives you tutors, which is very consistent, but then you're also spending probably your turn 2 if you're not ramping to play a demonic tutor. It just there's a balance there. So redundancy is the way to increase that, but also efficient win cons there's not as much redundancy. There's no 2 Underworld Breach effects. There's 1, and how would you find that? I mean, there's just it's a balance, and I find it interesting. Obviously, the answer is more colors generally because you get to have the more consistency, monocolored, and then if you could find a colorless cEDH deck, I would love that. But the consistency is just so not there. It's just not there at all.
That would be such a hard deck to play.
Yeah,
Colorless cEDH.
there was a Kozilek Mystic Forge deck at one point. I think I mentioned last week with Ken on the podcast, but they just how do you find your pieces?
Yeah.
You pray and you hope to get to 10 mana to cast your commander. Like, both of those things are not common in cEDH.
Good luck not getting hit by an Ocean Thief as well.
Oh no.
Jason, you hurt me so much the past 5 minutes. I don't know how to feel. These working conditions are just, inoperable.
I will say, in my new mono white deck, I am very much looking forward to playing Archivist of Ogma and just drawing all of the cards. Like those opposition agent style hate bears that just repeatedly give you value as opponents do things that are common to a format. Those are very attractive to me.
Yeah,
my favorite of those is the other white one that if an opponent would draw 1 or more cards, you just both draw 1. So
Alms Collector.
Yeah, Alms Collector.
Yeah.
I love that.
But Alms Collector's it's kind of garbage though.
Oh, it is. But it's hilarious.
What's the CMC of that card?
4.
4.
It's 3 and a white. It's 3 and a white.
Flash.
Yuck.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I know, right?
Too much.
Well,
it's
Notion.
1 mana off.
Yeah.
If it was 3, it'd be fantastic. Notion Thief, you draw
all
instead of them
those
drawing, so that's why it's better.
Mm-hmm.
But 4 mana white card, it at least has flash. But
Yeah.
I have never seen Alms Collector cast and be successful. I have tried.
I don't know why.
And it still just it feels unimpressive.
I've seen it in response to wheels being cast, but they were wheels not in your deck.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's the big restriction.
I don't know. It
Then
just
you're
feels...
also playing cards based on what your opponents are playing, and when you get to a competitive format, it gets a little weird trying to do that.
It feels very much in White's color identity to be instead of us discarding our hand and drawing 7, we're also going to discard and draw 1.
Yeah.
Well, you would still
draw 3.
Yeah, you still draw the.
You
still draw the 7.
Yeah.
Well, you draw the 7 and then 1 for each opponent.
Yeah.
If you're casting,
That's right. I don't.
It's helpful there. It's really good there.
It is.
What are those decks called?
situation?
The wheels? Are they just wheels decks? Is that I know they have a name specific Notion. No.
Opus Thief.
Opus Thief. That's it. They probably played it at one point, but I haven't looked at one.
Yeah,
of those
there was a
lists.
time where they played it, but they also played Notion Thief.
Yes.
Notion Thief,
card.
the better option.
Notion Thief
right?
pitches the Force, so therefore it's better.
Correct. Phil, have you given any thought to playing Deep Gnome Terramancer in those decks as well?
Yes, I am. So Charles and I had a discussion about this card, and I was like, okay, I'm looking at this. I see it. I see the potential. Charles, what do you think? Do I replace this card? And he essentially said, I don't have the games to know for sure. It seems theoretically good, but it's a question of how consistent is it in the early turns of the game?
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that when it's out there, people can play around it? Or is that going to is it going to give me the ramp that I want it to? Or am I better off with that just being another hate bear?
I mean,
of some
even
other
if it
nature.
hits once or twice in a mono white deck, that's still really good. Being able to ramp up that by 2 for 2. Is it 2 or 3 mana?
It's 2.
It's 2. I mean, given the prevalence of 4 and 5 color blue piles that are fetching 2 to 3 times per game, I think it's reasonable, if not more.
Only 2 to
So
3?
the thing is you have to just compare it to straight up a mana rock.
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm. That's true.
If you play Deep Gnome Terramancer, it makes it 1 turn cycle around the table, but no one has fetched or otherwise put another land into play, right? You have gotten worse than a mana rock, you have a 2/2 with no abilities. So this is one of those questions of what is the floor of the card versus what is the ceiling of the card, and where in actual gameplay does this happen? Because if the average is this gets me a land per turn cycle or greater, the card is potentially viable. And if the average is this gets me 0.33 lands per turn cycle, it's not viable.
It trades with Timna though, so it's at least somewhat playable.
Look, the mono white deck is not going to have a problem trading a hate bear for Timna.
This is true.
We're going to have disposable bodies.
Just gotta find a way to kill the Ledger Shredder.
That's a tough one.
All right. And with that, Phil, thank you very much for being on the podcast. And thank you for everyone listening to the podcast or watching this if you're watching it on YouTube. Phil, it's been an absolute pleasure. Where can our lovely audience find you, and what should they expect to see from you soon?
You can find me at ThrabenU on Twitter or ThrabenU on YouTube, ThRaben, and then the letter U. I am dropping video content 7 days a week on YouTube for the summer, and if you enjoy playing with janky deck lists or getting ideas for your cEDH deck lists from Legacy and other Eternal formats, consider checking me out. I'm rounding the corner on 15K YouTube subs, and I'm looking to do a giveaway of some kind once I actually hit that.
That's awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah, be sure to subscribe to ThrabenU. Phil makes great content. We all love his content, obviously. And we love our content as well. Make sure you subscribe to our channel. Yes, we're going there.
Nice plug there, buddy.
So, of course, we have our WrinklyBrainEDH channel. If you are listening to this now, this should be on the WrinklyBrainEDH channel, our second channel. You can check out our main channel where we've had recent gameplay footage, including one game featuring Phil Gallagher of ThrabenU with him on his Zancha deck. So if you'd love to see a very fun game, genuinely one of our favorite games that we've recorded in since the entire history of the channel,
one of our
really.
favorite games on the channel.
It's top 5 for sure. Go and check it out. We've got a link tree so you can go find all of our social media. Patreon if you want to give us money so that we can make better content. We really appreciate that. Drop a like, comment, subscribe. We really appreciate it. All of it helps immensely. Thank you once again to Phil Gallagher here for coming on and teaching us about your content and moving into cEDH and EDH, rediscovering your love of the formats. I've been Jason with Ethan, Cameron, and Phil Gallagher. Thank you all very much. Have a nice day.